Yes, and welcome to Future Journalism Today Live. Whenever you're watching, wherever you're watching, we've got Nadine Rabat, our co-host, and Sophie van Oostvoor, our special guest today. So thank you for joining us, Sophie, today.
Thank you for having me.
And before we go straight into the topic of today, where you know quite a lot about is audience engagement. But before we go into that, let me say and ask the viewers, especially since this is audience engagement, please do engage with us and ask your questions, your comments, your links, resources, things you find interesting and relevant to this interview. Please add it to the I have to put it over there to the chat, and we'll be looking at it during the entire show and see if Sophie can answer or can relate to the things you're asking or saying. So, another warm welcome. And now, without any further ado, Nadine, could you introduce Sophie to our audience?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much again for having me, Lawrence. And hi, Sophie. Great to have you today. So thank you for being our guest. Before I'm going to introduce you, maybe a few words about the session today and how it's going to keep rolling. Sophie, again, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to introduce you in a minute, and afterwards we are going to talk a little bit about some tools that you are using when you are working, considering the topic of audience engagement. We are going to ask you what types of advice you have concerning everything journalists are supposed to stop during their work, but trying to be a bit more positive in the end. So advice you can give to everyone working at any kind of media outlet. And in the end, we have our live Q&A. So everyone, please join us, ask any kind of question you have. Today is the day to, get everything out you would like to know. So yeah, but now let's start up with the first part of this live stream. Sophie, we are going to talk a little bit about you, and please correct me if there's anything missing or if there's anything you would like to add. You are freelanced, but you're working mainly as an audience engagement editor.
I have to correct you there already.
Yeah.
I'm working under contract since this month again at NRC.
Oh, okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats. Okay, so now you're again in a contract, but you are mainly an audience engagement editor at NRC. Is this still correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So you are focusing on how to involve and engage with subscribers at NRC. Just for everyone who doesn't know NRC, it's called NRC Handelsblad, which is often abbreviated to NRC. And this is a daily evening newspaper published in the Netherlands, based in Amsterdam, right?
Yep.
Okay, great.
We also have a morning edition, which is called NRC.
Okay.
But just NRC now.
So information all day, every day, which is, of course, most important nowadays. You have a print version which has 1.4 million readers per month, and a digital version which has 41.5 million page views per month. So quite a few people are reading and maybe listening to any kind of content you have on NRC. And on top, there's not only the logo of NRC, but another logo, which is called the Neue Leser, which is your personal newsletter, which is great. The Neue Leser is translated, or can be translated to the new reader, right? And you are focusing on the topic of the needs of media users or the public in general, which is, of course, super interesting and makes absolute sense with your job in audience engagement. About the beginning of your career, just a few words about that. So you started, of course, with a few internships, as most people in journalism did, probably. Then you were an editor at Het Parool, which is a Amsterdam-based newspaper as well, in 2016. And afterwards, you've worked for a Red Pers. Am I saying this right? Okay.
Yeah, that first. Yeah.
Okay, which is a platform for journalistic development. Super interesting as well. And then you started working for NRC in 2017. So about the Neue Leser, hold on, I just missed my point to show you my points and here. So about your newsletter, first of all, you started writing this newsletter in 2019, which was quite early actually. And you are focusing on, as I said, any kind of topic around audience engagement. So some of the topics you've covered in the past were, for example, what is audience engagement? Is journalism going down due to the digital age? And what should newspapers actually be on the internet? So, Sophie, you started this newsletter in 2019, which is quite early because right now all of the newsletters are on the rise. How did you come up with the idea and why did you decide to exactly use this format?
It was a kind of a practical choice, actually. I was working under contract at NRC, and then I wasn't. I started freelancing again, and then I thought I have to put myself out there as an expert, and I was expertising at audience engagement. So I thought I was reading a lot. I was reading a lot of newsletters about audience engagement. So I thought, why not start my own? So I started my own weekly newsletter, and my idea was to help people in newsrooms to involve readers in there or listeners or viewers, whatever, in their work, and how to do that, because audience engagement has been around for a while, but it's not very successful in many newsrooms. So I thought maybe just help give the people in newsrooms practical tips on how to involve the readers in their work.
Let's show a clip of how it might look, because this is one of the translated version, Nadine, right?
Right, I translated it with Google Translate, which worked wonderful. So this is what you can read there. I can only recommend to go ahead and subscribe to Sophie's newsletter because it works beautifully with Google Translate. And I found it super interesting what you've written about the topic. Will we soon have a Corona recess? Yeah.
And Sophie, if I may ask, why did you choose to use the Rasmus Kleis-Nielsen quote? And I think it's there every
it's there every
issue,
year.
right? Yeah.
It's from an article he wrote last year in May on the effects the pandemic will have on journalism. Yeah. And I kind of panicked reading this article. I was really breathing down a paper bag, and then in the end he said, well, fundamentally people will use media to help them, and I was like, okay, so this is what we should do to make journalism better, to make journalism that will help people. Sometimes it's not always easy to find a new subject for my newsletter. So when I'm in doubt, I find this quote and I think, oh, right, I can write about this.
Yeah, it's like a real call to action, more or less, right? Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Okay, I just put your newsletter into the comments so everyone can subscribe to it.
Great. But they have to know Dutch or use the translate function, right? Yeah. Or are there any plans to go international, Sophie? Because I know from being an avid reader of your newsletter that you do tend to use a lot of international sources, right? And examples.
Yeah. So I've thought of it, but I'm working full time now, and I do like my sleep. So if I start writing it in English, it'll be a lot of more work. But if there's a lot of ask, I'll consider.
But since you're using Substack, you could do monetization of this newsletter, right?
Also, maybe I'll quit NRC again after a month.
Maybe more of that later on. So. Nadine, what do you else have in store?
Concerning questions, well, from the newsletter to more of the topic of the newsletter. So I was wondering, Sophie, how did you get into the topic of audience engagement? I mean, audience engagement is a great topic, of course, for any kind of journalist. If you have, read a little bit into it, and if you know how valuable it can be, maybe we can get into this in a minute as well. But how did it, attract your interest? Getting into audience engagement?
Well, actually, it started when I still was working at Het Parool. I was working at the city guide, so I was writing about events, new restaurants opening, all sorts of stuff. And I was always thinking about how can I make something that'll help the readers. For example, when King's Day came along, I made a map of all the parties in the city, which were going on day and night. So I was trying to guiding the people or the readers, and then I came working at NRC, and actually it was because I went to the International Journalism Festival in Perugia, and I was listening to all these people talking about the public and the readers, and we should do more with them. And so that's actually how it all started, and then. We started to have reader comments at nrc.nl at our website. So I kind of rolled into it. It's not like I woke up one morning and thought, audience engagement, this is what I'm going to do. But I think it's so important that we involve the public in what we do. And I try to help people doing that.
So yeah, it's interesting. And so you started out at the Parool thinking about this and reading, and then going to the festival in Perugia, which is like the Burning Man for journalists, more or less. Right?
Yeah.
I've never been, so I'm very jealous, Sophie. But I was thinking, and it's obviously a cliche and a very hard question, probably. But how would you define audience engagement? Because I think it has so many dimensions or levels. So where would you start?
Well, I wrote a newsletter about this very topic not so long ago. But I think it's about how to involve your public in journalism. So it's not. It's about involving them in making your journalism, but also involving them in talking about the product after it's made. So really. Pull them in, and use what they tell you to make better journalism.
And then, so it starts when you're thinking about a topic, or when you're writing or producing, or is it after publication?
No, actually, it's all the time, because now in a perfect world, it will be all the time. When you think about it as a subject, and you can think about, what questions do my readers have about this subject. And then you start writing, and then you ask them, do you have any knowledge or experience that'll help me with this article or podcast or whatever you're making. And after you're done, you ask them again, how should I continue on this subject, or what did you think about the production I've made? So actually it should be in every step of the way, but the way we do it at NRC right now, it's mostly at the beginning when we do it. We have a call out. We made a call out just today about how people experience freedom during the pandemic. So we asked people for their experiences, and the journalist will write a piece about it next week. So this is at the beginning.
Yeah, because when Nadine and I did some research on audience engagement, we came across this this model, which we just showed you pre live, and it's a 10-year-old diagram. I think was being used by The Guardian at that time. Someone presented it at a conference from The Guardian. But when you saw this, you immediately said, "Well, now there's the Harken ring, so we'll go into the ring." But can you? Does it still hold? Because I think this sort of relates to what you just described. You could do this pre-publication, so asking people what does freedom mean to you, or how was it inflicted, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's still the same. Actually, there was a piece last year on Nieman Lab. It was on a research that audience engagement or public journalism. It's been around since 1992. It's the year I was born, so it's been around for a long time, and it comes back every time. But it doesn't really root. So yeah, this kind of it's still it still works. This pre-publication, post-publication kind of. And there's still a lot of untapped potential, like you can see.
And then, if Nadine, if you could go to the next slide, this is the Harken ring that Sophie pointed us. Oh, you might have to refresh it. This is
hold on.
Then, if you go on and refresh it, and I can put in, we have our first user engagement, our first question from the audience, and this is from, and I think I know now because she has been on several shows as a viewer, Maggie Farley. Because I see MF.
Hi, Maggie.
Maggie. So hi, Maggie. Good to see you again. Good to have you on the stream again. So good question about engagement. Do you feel like the reader involvement builds trust and loyalty? Do you use it to drive subscriptions? Very good questions, Maggie.
Well, let me start with the first question. It should be, if engagement done right, it should build involvement and or trust and loyalty, because you're transparent about the way you use the input from your readers. So readers do learn about the way you work. So in that way, it'll build trust. I've been wanting to do a project at NRC to see how we can use it to drive subscriptions, but it's like secondary. It's not. I wanted to see if we can use like call outs to gain newsletter subscriptions, and when people are subscribed to a newsletter, they're more likely to be a subscriber. So I haven't done it yet, but according to the Harken way, it works. So I haven't tried it out yet.
Okay. So maybe a little follow-up question, but Lawrence, please go ahead. You were first.
No, I was just wondering because you said, well, Maggie asked about subscriptions, and I think I've heard you say something maybe about membership. And I know Zetland, Leah Kroosgaard, who was a guest a few episodes back, and she did a thing, and she told her members, because they do memberships, which I've learned from the New York Times. If you become a member, you have a say in how the company should operate. But if you subscribe, you just pay and get something in return. But membership implies greater power over what the company is doing. But then I learned from Leah is that they asked members to get members, because I think they opened up their financial situation and said more or less, and I might be a bit unnuanced here, but said, we're in dire straits. We need financial support now. Could you tell your friends and family and coworkers that you like us and that they need to get a membership? And so they had a member get member, and it worked. So they were very transparent, and you say, and they had a very loyal membership, but they needed just more financial backing. So. Yeah.
And I think also transparency is a part of engagement, because if you want to involve your readers or your public in what you do, you have to tell them what you are doing. I was at a presentation once, and someone said, we expect the public to understand how journalism works, but we have never explained it to them. So okay, we
it's a good one.
That expectation.
Yeah.
So I think that's if you think about journalism, and I think there and how newsrooms work. Like for us, it's like we do it every day, but for the people for the public, it's not logical at all. I get when friends ask me about my work, they ask, but how do you get news? Where does it come from? They really don't know, and they're not stupid people. They've been to universities, but.
Yeah, I think a couple of years ago, I was at a conference where I think I don't know if he's the head of the Nieman Lab, Joshua Benton, and he was the keynote speaker, and he started the conference, and his very first remark was, "You're all very weird.
Yeah.
You're very weird people. Were you on the same conference?
Yeah,
you're very weird because you follow the news, you know how it's made, but you're just a very small percentage of society, and so you don't consider yourself a regular user." But let's go to the Harken ring maybe, and if you could explain a bit more, Sophie, if you like.
Yeah, well, this is like what I just talked about, how you involve the readers in every step of the way, actually. So, well, depends on where you start, but let's start at the newsroom invites the feedback from the public. So yeah, you start asking. Harken is asking, and then the public gives feedback, and then the newsroom uses the feedback. So it's
That's it.
yeah, then you're done.
Yeah.
But the important thing is to keep going. When we do call outs and people send us an email with their experience or their knowledge, we always email them back with what we did with it, because I think it's important to give back. If they start giving things to us, we have to let them know, because sometimes we do a call out and there's the journalist just can make an article from it because they use it for background information, or the answers were different than they thought they would be, and so we email the readers back and say, thank you for your information, and it's your input has been used for background information in this and this and this article, but so and thank you. Because I think if you just stop, people will stop sending input.
So you already said you're working with emails. Are there any other channels to get the feedback from your readers? How do you go on with this?
We use a form. We built that ourselves. Well, I didn't build it. The people who know how to build things build it. And then it goes through email. So people fill in the form, and then we get an email in the Lezers Desk inbox, and then we forward it to the journalist. So that's it's a very easy tool. It's not complicated.
Okay, and this is the main way you are using this tool, like no WhatsApp groups or something else, like I don't know.
No, that's the tool we use most of the time. Sometimes we use social media, but it's hard to keep track of, because we don't want. And sometimes the subjects are how do you say, are privacy gevoelig,
sensitive,
and sensitive. So we don't want to use like the open channels. We use Talk on our website for reader comments, and we try to use Talk for call outs. But then the reaction of the comments appears on the website, so people weren't commenting because they thought, to the other readers.
But let me ask you, Sophie, because we're 22 minutes in right now, and you've shown us two models, and you say, well, it looks quite clear and simple, and when you defined what audience engagement entails, it sounds very clear as well. But I think all three of us and our viewers as well will know that it's in practice, it's kind of hard to get all journalists on the same page, right? And to get the same sense of why this is important and why this should be normal practice in journalism, but it is not. Could you tell us why it's so hard to implement?
Well, first of all, journalists don't have, journalists are busy all the time. they have too much work for too little time. So that's first. And I think when journalists, at least that's in my experience, when journalists have used like call outs for their articles, and they see it works, it's a success, they'll use it again. It's just not in their toolbox yet, so that's why. And it's also, it's tricky, it's hard, it costs a lot of time to make a call out, to email them back. It's not just it's easier to call like an expert and ask for his opinion and then write the article and you're done. But when you do audience engagement and you do it right, you have to, like we just saw, you have to keep the feedback loop going, because otherwise it won't work. So why it's because it costs a lot of time, and in newsrooms, time is there's a lot of
it. Yeah. definitely.
So yeah, eventually, should your role be should it sort of self-destruct? So every journalist is part audience engager in a way.
I think so. Yeah, in a perfect world, it would be. Yeah. If I do my job right, I don't have to do it anymore in a while.
Okay, and therefore I think you've made us something for all our viewers, and that's the 5-step guide, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna switch, but first, then, because you're gonna unbox your 5-step guide on how to use how to do this engagement with analytics.
Mm-hmm.
So let me see. This is our little animation, and then we'll show your screen to the stream.
Yeah.
So please, if you will, Sophie.
Well, I wrote this guide in my newsletter a while back, like last year, so I think it's very important to use reader feedback. But you don't always have a reader feedback, and like I said, it costs a lot of time to gather it. But I think in every newsroom you have editorial analytics. So you can see which articles are popular, which ones get a lot of page views and reading time, and which don't. So I thought of a way to use editorial analytics for journalists to get a little feedback from your readers. So we can go to the next slide.
I think you have to go to the next slide, Sophie.
Yeah.
Or is it Lawrence?
No, I think you can.
I did
it.
Great. So first things first, you have to get access to your own analytics. At NRC, we use Parsley for like the individual
Parsley,
journalists.
right?
Parsley, yeah. So they can see which articles get like read best and which don't, and through which channels the readers come to their articles. So you should gather like the page views. I think are important, and then also the average reading time, because page views don't say everything. You have to know how long people are in the article. And then you want to know the traffic sources. So did the readers come through Google or through Facebook or whatever? So if you've gathered that you can gather those the analytics for like a month, like maybe for April, you can put them in an Excel sheet.
Yeah.
What you do then, the second step is to categorize your articles. If you just I did this for my own newsletter a while back, and when you work in a newsroom, you can use like you can use genres, or you can make your own categories, like to explain or to update or to educate. So you have a little bit of an overview of what kind of articles you write and how successful they are. That's like the first feedback you get, is what kind of genres do get a lot of page views or reading time, and which don't.
And I see these categories, if you said to explain, to update, to educate, they seem like I encounter these in models like the BBC World user needs models, and I think there's some others that are similar. Did you took a few pages from those models as well?
You can use those. There are 6 reader needs for the BBC model is 6.
Yeah.
But it's just which categories are like logical to what kind of journalism you make. For me, it's not, for my newsletter, for example, it's not logical to make categories of interview or whatever, or like a news article. For me, it's more logic to use the BBC categories to explain, to update.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you make, or what you want to know. Yeah, did you want to say something? Oh.
Yep.
Well, then step 3, then you start giving feedback to yourself. So which articles make you proud? Did you want to send to your mother? And of which one you thought, I could have done better. What I did, I marked the newsletters which I was proud of with green, and the ones I thought, I make them red. So then you have like this Excel sheet with your analytics. They're categorized, and you've given yourself feedback. And then comes the next step. You put the analytics and your own feedback together. When you do that, you'll get like 4 categories. And I'll just go through them and what you can do with them. So the first one, we will just start with the nicest one. These are the articles that you're proud of and attracted a lot of readers. So they got a lot of page views or got a long engaged reading time. So when you've patted yourself on the back and look how good I am at my job, there are a couple of questions you can ask yourself, because of course you want to repeat this success. So you can look up where did this article was it put in a newsletter? Did it like go viral on Facebook or Twitter? And how did you think that like came about? Did it was it like picked up by another medium, or was there like an action group retweeting your article? Those kinds of things. And then you also want to know what were the headline like and the lead. What did they say? What did they speak to people, or was it was there, I don't know, phrase in there that made it so successful? And then you also want to know what the genre was, if you haven't done that yet in the categories, and why did you think it spoke to the people? Why do you think it was a good genre for this piece? And maybe did you do something differently than you would usually do? So if you have answered these questions, you'll want to put them on a post-it and post it on your computer and look at it as many times as you can.
So very visual.
Mm-hmm. I have that post-it. So next one is a tough one. We're gonna do first another one. Those are the articles that you're not really proud of, but did attract a lot of readers. So then again, you go again about, and you see why did it get why did it gain so many readers, and through which channels did they came. And maybe there was something in the headline or in the lead that did speak to a lot of people, and which made it a success. So then this is the hard one. These are the articles that you're proud of but did not attract a lot of readers. So then you want to check if the piece was like promoted right. Was it put on social media? Was it put in a newsletter, or maybe not? And then you want to check why. Maybe it was just a newsletter was full with articles from your colleagues. It happens, and maybe you can promote it anyway on a later moment. Or maybe it wasn't a newsletter, but the text that went with it was not. Was not right. Didn't really was about the essence of the piece, and you can talk to the social editors or the newsletter editors, and I'll see if they can do it better next time, or explain why you thought it should have done differently. Then there's also the option of maybe the engaged reading time was short. Maybe you wrote a piece of 2,000 words and people only stayed in there for like a minute. Then you can check if maybe what happened. You know, you can go into the piece and see maybe there was a video or a link or something that made the people leave the article, or maybe there was a piece in an interview which maybe people found boring or not that interesting and left. And if you use Chartbeat in your newsroom, and I think Parsley does it too, you can, if it's live, you can see the scroll depth of articles, so you can see where people like leave.
Yep.
Well, and then again, you check the headline and the lead, and maybe this time the headline was just a quote, and there was no name with the quote, or it had a word in it that maybe was a little bit too too specific. Maybe people didn't quite understand what it was about, and or what was a clickbait headline. And people left because they didn't got what they expected they would get. And then you should also check, was the timing right? Was this the article people wanted to read at this moment? Maybe it was maybe it wasn't the right article at the right time for this subject. And then the last one, the articles you're not proud of and did not attract a lot of readers. Well, that's easy. That's an easy one, actually. You can just stop.
The worst category.
Yeah. I was commissioned to write this, but I didn't want to. That could be a reason as well, right? Yeah.
That could be that could be an option, but then you should talk to your superior, because then something isn't going as it should be. And then the last one, act on the findings. So get that posted, put it on your computer, and repeat this thing. You can, like, because if you've done this once, you want to see if it works, and you can do it again and talk about it with your colleagues. And also remember that analytics aren't everything. Sometimes an article is great. You've done your best, but people just don't read it, because there have been a lot of examples when I was working at NRC, and there was an article I thought, well, this is going to be a hit. Everyone is going to want to read this, and nobody did. So readers are just like people there.
And would you say you have to perform these 5 steps on your own as a solo exercise, or do you think you should do this together with some fellow co-workers you trust? And
well, you should, of course, because they can have they'll probably have insights that you don't. Maybe
you might have some blind spots, right? Yeah.
Why an article is reading good or not.
Yeah. So, but it's really well. Thank you for sharing these 5 steps with us, because I think they're quite clear, quite practical, straightforward, and something every journalist could do. You don't need a lot. You only need to get the access to your own analytics or the analytics for your articles. But I think nowadays most journalists will have access to that, could ask for. And it's very, as Nadine said as well, it's very visual as well, the way you've presented it. But how you do this, you can almost see this sort of this wall or your desktop with post-its. So it's very, very practical. So thank you for sharing. And I see Maggie saying, "Is there a link to the guide?" So I don't know.
I'll put it in the. It's in Dutch though, but.
And then,
as I said, Google Translate is your best friend in this case.
Put it in the comments.
So and with that, we've looking at the time as well. We've come to, I think, one of the last things of what we do here on Future Journalism Today Live, and that is to ask you for advice. And already, of course, this step guide is very practical advice, but maybe you have a different thing you would like to say or would like to add, and then I'll put the link into the the chat.
I'll put it in the private chat.
Yeah, great. So
I'm going to post it in the chat afterwards.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you.
Sophie, what would be your advice on stop doing and start doing?
Well, I was I was talking with a couple of my colleagues like last week, and about readers, and about, well, they're difficult, and they're how do we grasp what the readers want? People ask me those kinds of questions because I think I'm like a reader guru or something, but I think
You
that
are. Because
yeah.
you read a lot about it,
Most
you wrote about it, you actually do this kind of work. So
yeah, that's true. But the most important thing to remember is that readers are people, and try and think of what I try to think of them as such, because I in newsrooms, like readers are seen as some kind of alien creature, which goes about, and I think if you start thinking as of readers as just people walking down the street, you're halfway there.
Yeah.
Just to put it in practice.
Yeah, so think about your users as people. You say
Yeah.
that would be your biggest advice. So they might have maybe fears, anxieties, wishes, dreams, and
what I think of what would they want to know? What would they want to read about? When you, for example, when you compose a newsletter like I do several days a week at NRC, I always try to think of, what do they want to know, and why would they want to click on this article? Why should they read this? So really start thinking when you think about journalism, start thinking about readers or public, or start there, and then follow through.
So I have a question concerning the readers as well. So readers have been engaged with editors over the years, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about letters to the editors that might have been forgotten a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Is this maybe a revival of letters to the editors, to get more engagement with the readers, or how would you go about this?
I don't really understand your question. What?
So, do you read more letters to the editors at the moment? Do you call to action a bit more to your readers? Do you tell them, please tell me about any kind of issue that is occurring to you so that I can cover it? Do you think this is the way to go in the future?
Well, I always think if you ask a question to your readers, or again, listeners or viewers, you should really specify it. Because if you ask, what's going on in your life, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's raining. I had a very busy day. It's very hard to just so. So if you ask questions to your readers, really specify it and know what you want to do with it, so you can so you don't raise expectations you don't can commit to.
Okay, so you're not going to cover the cat sitting on the tree just because a person has written you a letter to the editor.
No.
Okay.
Unless there are a lot of cats sitting in trees, and then there's a pandemic of cats sitting in trees going on. But
unless it's needing a whole fire truck colony to get them down, okay.
And how do you feel about that there might be a difference between user driven or data driven, user informed, and agenda setting? Because that's what you tend to get back as an answer from I think really senior journalists. They said, well, if we would ask the audience what they needed, we get the same sort of, which isn't true in my experience, by the way. But then they would say, because we need to investigate certain stuff, we need to write about certain stuff that people might not ask about because they don't know it exists, or there's something wrong over there. And then there's user informed, like maybe stuff Nadine and I did when we demoed how to use Google Trends, because there's quite some information to get from Google Trends to inform you as a journalist about what people are searching for. Like, for example, now with the vaccines and blood clots and those anxieties, you could really get the kinds of words people are using when they search for that information. So you could sort of debunk or use that within your writing. But so how do you feel about that? About the sort of distinctions between agenda setting and working user informed or user first, like user engaged?
Well, first of all, I think right now you don't have to involve readers in every subject or with every theme you're writing about, because sometimes it is just not practical or possible to involve them in those sorts of stories.
And not for every article on climate change, right? If
or maybe
Joe Biden organizes this, then you should not ask your audience each time, so how do you feel about climate change?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that first.
So choose the right topic and the right time again. It's like,
yeah.
And then engage as much as possible as soon as you have a topic, just stay in contact with everyone.
Again, like think about what does this mean to your readers when you maybe write about housing or healthcare or whatever. What does this topic mean to your readers, and what struggles do they might have?
Yeah,
and then start searching.
Yeah, and it's a bit of an anecdote, but I found it very romantic in a way, this user engagement or audience engagement. I think one of your more well-respected investigative journalist, Joep Domen, who did, I don't know how to translate, but he did research into, I think, it wasn't corruption or something of fraud in the south of the Netherlands, with government money being sort of siphoned away to sort of private companies that government officials put up in their sort of spare time to take these funds for their own private matters. And then so he did an investigation on that, and afterwards, and he said during a podcast on this topic to the interviewer, he said, "Yeah, I just came into the newsroom and I saw there were quite some actual mails. He had the envelopes with written letters that were left to the editor." And he said there'll probably be more. There will be more reveals regarding this matter. And then I thought, wow, this really seems like a romantic way that people. So you've opened up a Pandora's box in a way. He did by the good old, really good journalism, I think. And then people say, well, if you've looked into that, you might look into this.
Well. It still happens.
It's snowball rolling in a way. Yeah. But that also, would you consider that also as audience engagement?
I think good journalism always is engaging or makes impact, so people want to engage. It's not with every piece, but with this kind of like revealing pieces, it happens. So it is a little, because it was just very fine journalism.
Yeah. Well,
so Sophie, one more question to you. How do you measure your success if you are working in audience engagement?
Yeah.
Is it already a success when people are engaging and sending you a question? Is it a success if they are subscribing to NRC? How do you measure your success?
Well, right now, we measure the success by is the journalist happy with the input? So can he make better journalism, or she, because of this, because of the input from the readers? So then we call it a success. So was the journalism good? Was the journalism that followed from this from the engagement, was it good? Then it's a success.
Okay, thank you.
And I think those should be some excellent closing words. So thank you, Sophie, for joining us today and giving us these 5 steps, this guide, and the way you see things, the things you've done. I think it's really interesting, and I think it's very helpful, very practical. and let's see if there will be any more successes. And so please do let us know if there's a new project, or the Freedom Project. We'd love to know how that involves the audience.
Mhm.
So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you, audience,
again for having me.
for joining
Thank
us.
you so much.
Sophie, stay on for a little bit, but I'll end the stream. So now we have to smile and wave, right? Oh, I'll have to use my other hand. See you next month. And we have someone from Germany, Nadine, again as a special guest, right?
Yes, we do, but we won't spoiler right now.
No. Bye.
Bye.